Good evening, and welcome to We Believe Digital Studios. So glad you're joining us for our regularly scheduled Monday Sizzling in Mississippi program. Chris Young alongside Maati, Jone, Primm. How are you, Maati?
Doing well. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing just fine. And whenever I see you all adorned in your beautiful, bright colors and all, and I look at my grayness and everything, I just think, wow. I got to be your best friend. Stand right out. But thank you. We make a good pair. Yeah. So, but thanks for being here, and to our producer too. You know, a lot of people be heading off for the holiday tomorrow already, but we're sticking with the show and got a lot to talk about tonight, kind of in a couple of different headings and all, but. You know, here we are on Independence Day Eve, and did we have a week as they wound out the Supreme Court.
Yes, we did.
You know, it just, and I think the sign over the top of the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, they say, SCOTUS.
Yes.
Is equal justice under the law.
Yeah.
I think that's what it says.
Yeah.
And it was on, let's see, on June 8th, there was a decision. Mm-hmm. And I love seeing how these things play out. I mean, obviously, I don't like all the outcomes, but I love seeing how things play out. On June 8th, they had that Alabama issue. And we may have mentioned that briefly on the last show. The court ruled that Alabama had diluted the power of black voters. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A state would do that.
Alabama would.
And they're not alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And diluted the power of black voters by drawing a congressional voting map with a single district in which they made up a majority, and they struck that down by a 5-4 vote.
Wow, it's close.
Really, really close.
Yeah, shouldn't have been.
But then I went back and looked at the public response. Mm-hmm. 53% of the American public agreed with what they did.
Okay. On
something like that. And you know, we have the very same thing here in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. It was just less than a year ago when Congressman Thompson's, you know, the gerrymandering here.
Right.
And these guys have become expert at figuring out ways to count the numbers.
Right.
And make it all seem like it's just as fair as the day is long.
Right.
But now you have Congressman Thompson in Mississippi going all the way from the top to the bottom.
Right.
You know, on the western part of the state.
Right. Yeah, his district looks like a piece of chewed up meat.
How are you supposed to cover, you know, all that? Their other districts are so much more compact. You can see how a representative could get out there and make their way around and grip and grin and do whatever they do, you know, and his is the length of the whole state.
Right.
It's just bizarre.
Right.
And so it wouldn't surprise me if we see, you know, some type of suit coming here, especially following that.
The Alabama decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you know, we had Selma in 1965, and then in 2015, there was another march they've been having marches every year, but this one was the 50th anniversary in 2015 to recognize the so-called victories and advancements made in Selma for the state of Alabama and for the United States, period. And it just goes to show you that whatever progress is made is being rejected and regressed. And all we have to look forward to is much more of the same, fighting for the inches or the centimeters that were gained before and that are eaten away in feet.
Right. Yeah, would anybody know anything about Alabama if it wasn't for Selma?
Right. Well, we'd know it for Birmingham for the murder of 4 little girls in church.
True.
Yeah. Of the bomb exploding, and then two man-children later on that day being murdered as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've got some people tuning in and entering the chat. So glad to see you. If you want to call in, our number is 1-800-492-5186. We're so happy to have you in the chat. Just trying to talk over a little bit on these Supreme Court rulings is really the talk of the town, and all just and some of these decisions that we'll get to, just happening really on the eve of Independence Day, and it really makes you wonder. Also, there was a decision, Maati, on the 27th of June about a legal theory that would have given state legislators. Now, this is tied in with the last general election,
Okay.
and the hanky-panky that led up to January 6th.
Yes.
So the court rejected a legal theory that would have given the state legislators largely unchecked power to set the rules for federal elections. So, but just the idea that something like that is being challenged, it's like, is it the power of the people, or is it not the people? These people were trying to say with this obscure legal theory that, well, because the people had elected those representatives, that they could dicker with the numbers and stuff after the fact, after the people had already cast their votes. Supreme Court said no, but it was a 6-3 decision.
Wow.
And 6-3 on the right side of things.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's kind of obvious.
And
that would have been a hard one to pass.
Yeah. But when you go back and look, again, just 55% of the public, this is based on polling done by the New York Times. I just picked that one because it was one of the first ones that popped up. Agrees with that decision to not let those state legislators do that.
Yeah.
The vote of the people stands. It needs to be tabulated, carried forth, end of discussion. No debate, no manipulation of it.
Yes, yes.
On the 29th of June, a decision came down, a unanimous decision.
Wow.
Yeah, the last one on the list there. A postal worker had indicated that, that for religious reasons, I believe it was a male, it might have been a female, couldn't work on Sundays, but apparently they had a rotating shift or whatever, and he got asked to, work on Sundays. He said he couldn't do that for religious reasons, and he was disciplined for that. Well, that made its way to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court was unanimous, saying no. The employers need to make broader, accommodations for people with religious practices, religious beliefs that might limit their availability.
Okay.
So they actually agreed on something. All of them, all 9 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. See more people joining the chat. Glad to see you guys. Mr. Lewis in the house. Mr. Lewis asking why certain members of city council still talking about garbage. Well, they're going to have to figure that. They got less than a year now, right? Mr. Lewis, they got to get that figured out. So
exhausting.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And I found it so interesting that last week the county, Hinds County, just poof like that, just renewed the waste management contract.
Yeah, how about that?
Apparently they don't have the same beliefs as the mayor that we ought to afford, in a predominantly black county, that we ought to give a black contractor the opportunity to collect the trash.
Yeah.
Amazing. Really sticks out for me.
Sticks out for us all.
And then Maati, this ending on June 29th, ending affirmative action in college admissions. 6-3 vote, strong dissents by the minority. Jackson, Kagan, Sotomayor. The court ruled that race-conscious admission policies at Harvard and the University of North Carolina were unlawful. And crazy, 69% of the public from the polling that the New York Times did agrees with that decision.
Of course they do.
I think there's a crazy misnomer about affirmative action with college admissions. I'm not sure I can quantify this, but I'm not sure people really grasp that all these people are already fully qualified to start with before the concept. So it isn't like, well, they wouldn't have made it. No, they cut the mustard or they wouldn't even be being considered.
Right.
So they make it all seem like race when it's not all about race.
No, really the majority of it is about legacy. Because what hasn't been mentioned is that the idea of legacy candidates, which constitutes 43% of the enrolling class, fall under that heading, and there's not a problem with that. Bakke decision of 1978, this decision, they never really contend with the idea of legacy. Well, my father, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother attended the Ivy League, and so therefore that gives me a certain inroads that other people don't have. So you have C students, you have Bush going to an Ivy League.
Right.
You have people who aren't qualified for the Ivy League going to the Ivy League under the aspect of legacy.
Great-granddaddy went there, or great-grandmother or something.
Right. And because of that, they can walk in with whatever grades they deem to have, and it doesn't really matter, their legacy, so they get in. But what kills me is that the students or the attorneys that brought up this case, of course, they went looking for some candidates to try the idea of affirmative action in the Ivy League, and the Asian students that are there that are complaining need to stop and think about the fact that really, what are they complaining about? There are 7% of the American population is Asian. 27% of Harvard's student body is Asian.
Not much to complain about.
Not much to complain about at all. When it comes to black people in the undergrad, we're underrepresented. We're 9% of the undergrad student body of Harvard, and we're much more than that in the general population of the country. But this is what we get. And I've said to people, because this has been the talk of the town, that okay, fine, forget it. I don't care anymore. I don't know that I ever cared. I attended a preparatory school that was there to prepare us for the Ivy League. It was a majority white school, like 95% white, and I attended that. And my schoolmates, many of them went on to places like Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth and such. And I didn't go because I chose not to go. I didn't want to be around anybody who was like my classmates. Right. They were awful. And I had just no. So at the age of 13, I started attending school. Anyway, I attended college then.
At 13?
At 13.
My goodness.
And so, and I went to school and prep school and college at the same time. And I did that because I didn't listen to the college advisor who told me I'd have a hard time going to any school. Well, forget you, and forget the SCOTUS. You don't want me at Harvard? I don't want to be at Harvard. I don't want to be any place that I'm not welcome.
Where you're not welcome.
Right. I don't think that Harvard offers black people much of anything in terms of true education. How much education are you getting at a place like Harvard? Imhotep didn't attend Harvard. You know, the greatest general ever known, the General of Carthage, Hannibal, he didn't attend Harvard. Mm-hmm. I don't need to attend Harvard. I need to be where I'm welcomed and where open dialogue can occur and not be punished.
I'd love to hear. I wish we could have Justice Jackson here talking to her, because she went there.
Yeah, well, she shouldn't have.
Well, but I'm saying she did. So the reality. But I wonder what she would have to offer to that.
As far as the benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't.
Lens crafters, I don't see it. Like I said, I went to the preparatory school.
Yeah.
My sister was the valedictorian in her class, and because of racism, they gave it to a white student who didn't deserve. He was in third place. Mm-hmm. She was in first place. Mm-hmm. And they did that because they did not want to have to say, here is this young black woman, and she's the smartest one in her class.
So she was the salutatorian?
Yes.
Instead of the valedictorian?
Right. But she came in, she had the highest grade point average.
But it's just, how you can wrap your head around something like doing that, because obviously that's somebody that had risen to the top of the crop, you know?
Yeah. Well, we get no pats on the back.
It's just bizarre, and we haven't seen the end of it. I was just reading this AP story today, folks, that Lawyers for Civil Rights, nonprofit based in Boston, has filed a complaint about this affirmative action decision on behalf of Black and Latino community groups in New England, alleging that Harvard's admission system violates the Civil Rights Act. So NAACP is adding their weight behind the effort on Monday, asking more than 1,500 colleges and universities to even the playing field in admissions, including by, as you said, ending legacy admissions.
You know what? There comes a point when what you're doing isn't working, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody. Some people just keep doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same sorry results.
Okay.
Okay? It's unsatisfactory. But for those who can think and not think that the white man's ice is colder, will take another path. There's such a thing as called historically black colleges and universities.
That's right. That's right.
And those are the institutions that produce the genius.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Instead of worrying about Baki and Asian Americans complaining and whoever else, and getting out marching and begging for scraps.
Yeah.
Just go
the heck
home.
with it. Take another course.
Go home.
Yeah.
Go home to Howard.
Yeah.
And make Howard even better. Let's look at raising endowments. Go to Morehouse.
Isn't it just baffling that they included in the language the exemption for the military?
Yeah. Yep.
Equal justice under law is what it says over the top of the building.
Right. Yeah, that under law means something. It means more than
our way.
There you go.
It means our way.
Right. And when it's not working my way, then I just change the law.
Ever since Plessy v. Ferguson.
Yes.
This embedded, not that it wasn't, but enshrined in law, white supremacy enshrined in law.
Yeah, but it sounded good.
But not that it wasn't there before, but with that court case, it became enshrined in law.
But see, Plessy Ferguson said separate but equal.
Yeah.
Now, if it was separate but equal, there wouldn't be a problem. The problem was it was never enforced. It was never equal.
And how do you have, and yet the decision comes out of a building that has a sign on top that says equal justice under the law.
Yeah. But what they mean by that is whatever we say it is, and we won't enforce any law that actually would benefit black people. So far, so good. I mean, you have Plessy versus Ferguson, but you also have Dred Scott.
No, right. Right.
Yeah, you have Jim Crow.
So that was the 29th of, and we just haven't heard the end of that. I don't know, those in the chat, if you have any thoughts about that. Mr. Lewis saying, if you don't want our scholars, then they don't get our athletes. Then they didn't abolish legacy additions, right?
Right, they didn't.
Admissions, rather, yeah.
Right. Now, how fair is that?
It's just not. It's just not. But they find a way to twist it all up like that. I'd feel certain that we haven't heard the end of it, but I just don't know. On the 30th of June, are we? I guess we're ready, Ariel. So we'll take I think we're at the end of our first segment, so we'll take a little dip out here for a couple commercials. We'll be right back with you.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Monday night's Sizzling in Mississippi here on We Believe Digital Studios, WeBelieveDigital.com. I'm glad to have you with us on this eve of Independence Day, and we do got a little something to talk about with that too. But Maati, another decision had to do this was on the 30th, just a couple days ago, canceling student loan debt forgiveness plan. Right. The court, and that was 6-3, and they said no, the Biden administration cannot wipe out more than $400 billion in student debt because it was not authorized by Congress. And the public is evenly divided on this in the polling, literally 50-50.
Yeah.
What's your 2 cents?
It's probably only worth 2 cents. The $400 billion rather, in forgiveness would have helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it would have helped a lot of people who now can forget about the Ivy League and Harvard. Rather.
Right.
Yeah. See, things that aid black people get canceled.
That's it.
People who invade the halls of the Capitol on January 6th with guns and tear it apart and vandalize offices and call for the head of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
It's a treasonous act, and it's handled with kid gloves. So
they're getting some of those. They're getting some sentences, but by and large,
Now, answer this question for me. January 6th, everything happened the way that it did, except for one thing. If the people had been black,
Oh,
what would have happened?
Civil War.
Massacre?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
just shot them.
No question.
Yeah, right there
No
where they
question.
stood. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about, you stress that number, that 400 billion. A one-time thing tied in conjunction with the pandemic, where so much suffering was going on.
Right.
But compare that 400 billion to the 2023 Department of Defense $2.01 trillion budget. So really interesting how these decisions get made, and the value that's placed on things.
Yes.
I don't think the President Biden was trying to disparage or disenfranchise people that have been able to pay the bill, but I think he saw lots and lots of people struggling for a good long while, and trying to do something about it.
Right.
That flowed more boats, and therefore you're out in the job market with your degree sooner, without that noose of debt around your neck,
Right.
and contributing more to the economy. Lift all boats. But they just wouldn't hear that.
No, they wouldn't. Sounds too much like fairness. So
It's interesting too, because we've been hearing about these ethical concerns with a couple of the members of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And one of them was, now I can't remember which one, but one of them had a grandchild or a nephew or something. Some billionaire paid his college tuition. So Grandpa didn't have to. The Supreme Court judge didn't have to pay up, either Alito or Thomas, one or the other.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we know that Thomas received all types of favors, trips and things like that, and accommodations, and fabulous places and vacations.
Everybody and their brother's piling on, Thomas at this point.
Well, we always have at the moment. Even before they approved him for the court.
I just thought it was pretty bizarre where you can go through, 15 years and he never once asked a question in oral arguments.
Right, yeah.
So, something I read today said that he actually had a relative that had been there. So, in a manner of speaking, he was a legacy, a generation apart or something like that.
Right. Former
for
head
Yale.
but former head of the Equal Employment, EEOC.
Yeah. Reagan put him in there, right?
Right, yeah. And what did it mean? It was a promotion for him, and after that he took up the ladder, and once he got up to the top, and he pulled the ladder for no one else to come behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on the student debt forgiveness. Certainly that's going to end up being challenged too. And then this final decision, the cake is the web designer for the same-sex wedding cakes. And now there's some other news out on that. That seems to fall under the religion, free speech, and gay rights. Again, a 6-3 decision. The court ruled that a web designer does have the First Amendment right to refuse to create websites for same-sex weddings, despite a state law that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation. And so the court went along with that. That was on the 30th of June, 6-3. Same three, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson against. And 51% of the public by the New York Times polling seems to agree with that decision. And then there was some news story. I don't know if any of you guys listening had heard this, but there was some news story about saying the guy that the web designer claimed had asked her to do it. He never made such a request of her. So now it looks like this precedent being set based on a lie. Now, I don't know why that was just figured out now instead of, 2 months ago or whatever, but a story I read somewhere and was told about it too. I stopped off at a place last night down in Bolton, and a guy down there said, "Hey, Chris, did you hear about this?" And I'm like, "No." Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, the guy said he never asked her to do what she claimed he asked her to do."
So it's just a test case, perhaps?
Maybe every single one of these are. You just don't know. But when I was looking through that polling data, Maati, that's the thing that just really, it's just so easy to see the divisions, because the numbers I'm given here are the overall when they're crunched together.
Sure.
But the disparity between Democrats and Republicans when they're doing these polling on this stuff, on these issues, is just, and I mean, when you see on the affirmative action decision, when you see an overall total of 69% of the public agreeing, boy, oh boy, that's a strong sentiment.
Yeah, that's Democrats as well as Republicans. So,
yeah. Yeah, so not sure which direction to go in with that. We've seen many court cases down here. I mean, we've been talking forever, it seems like, about HB 1020 here in Mississippi, about and before I say that, let me just say that it seems to me like, any of these big three decisions here can be affecting lots and lots and lots of people in Mississippi. So that's part of why we wanted to be sure to bring it up. Okay, and Kim Lewis says the athletes' parents are going with the money. Yeah, they're going to do that. Why wouldn't they do that? I mean, you can't blame them. Sure they are. And you can't blame them.
The unfortunate thing about professional athletes is that, on average, 18 months after they've retired, they're poor,
toast,
and in debt. They're not just poor. They start off poor, but now they come out and they're poor and in debt.
Right.
So it's looks like a panacea, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, now they're allowing college athletes to be paid.
Name, image, and likeness. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, on the pro level, did you see Jackson State got their first installment from Charles Barkley?
Yes.
He pledged $1 million when Dion was over there, and he's making good on it.
It's wonderful.
So that is really good, and we talk about all these court cases, and we've got these ones going on here in Jackson, in Hinds County. This HB 1020, putting the brakes on that. It's in the district court. We have. The Senate Bill 2343 that we've talked about so much. Two big parts of that. One, the peaceful protest, free speech, right of assembly. They want you to go get daddy's permission first before you can, go out walk on the sidewalk. And U.S. District Court Henry Wingate say that's prior of violation of your rights.
It really is.
You haven't even done anything yet, and they're already saying putting restriction or restraint. Right. I'm trying to remember which word they used, but so that is
There's no cause for it.
There's just no cause for it. There's no need for it. But when they see the world through the eyes that they see the world, oh, well, this is a black city and a black county, so, we're going to call the shots.
Right. Just in case black people decide to do something, they can think of something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I mean, the crowds have been small, and they've all been mannerable, and nothing has ever happened, never leaving the place worse than when they came. And they just wanted to speak out. What's the problem?
The biggest ones that I've seen personally since I've been down here
Sure.
were the Poor People's Campaign
Okay.
rallies. And they seem to put a lot of work in.
Sure.
But I think the most residents that we had attending any one of them was about 300.
Yeah.
The other ones, I think, were less than that.
Sure.
I remember writing stories about it in the paper, and I wished I could have said it was more than it was, But and it was right outside the Capitol in Congress, right at the corner, right by the mansion.
Yes.
And in fact, William Barber calling out that governor, at the top of his lungs on that microphone.
Yeah, but he didn't like it, huh?
I don't know if the governor was peeking around that curtain.
Right, trying to figure out.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But there was no reports that they left a mess or anything like that. I can't imagine they would ever do that.
Right.
Everything was civil.
Right.
And why would you want to restrict that in any way? Why would you not want to? Only because you're on the wrong side of the ball. That's why.
Yeah. It's just everything that black people want to do, try to do, think to do, it's always met with great resistance.
Yeah.
And other groups can come along and just walk in. But black people have to sit in, pray in, die in, get arrested, go to jail.
Figure out where the goalpost is.
Yeah.
Start making your way toward it.
Yeah.
Then poof.
Right.
It's been moved.
Right.
They can't abide any form of black advancement.
No, none.
Which is not to say that many, of course, your store, for example, your walls are filled with black advancement.
Right.
And ought to be required reading, I think, for every single student going through school in Jackson.
Sure.
Ought to be required, a field trip to Marshall's. But by and large, these people just stand in the way of that.
Right.
Kim Lewis says P. Diddy gave money also. I remember that too. I can't remember the dollar amount, but it was a big chunk.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's good. And who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of the tide turning more with HBCUs.
Right. Well, I think that's what needs to happen. We just need to say, fine. I'm not interested in signing petitions and protesting to get admissions into an Ivy League for me or for anybody else.
Right.
It's just not worth it. And I think that black people as a whole should start thinking about the Ivy League as the Ivory League and think of it as an exceptionally white supremacist institutions formed to keep black people down. And for the few that they admit, those black people are there to be trained to be the buffer class that would stand in between black and white issues, supporting white issues over black. So what's the point? Do we need to be there? No.
There's got to be a convenient way to alter, resumes and applications to say, I qualified in all respects for admission to Yale University, but I chose, to go to Howard.
Right.
Where I knew I would be welcomed.
Right.
That type of, and loved. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's really the main thing, that the difference between the white institutions and the black institutions is that when black people go to black institutions, we're cared for, we're loved, we're listened to, we can have a difference of opinion with the professor, and it's fine.
Maati, I can't even go to a Jackson State home game without crying, because the things I see going on, I don't know, it just hits me.
Yes.
There's just a depth, a realness, to that love.
Right.
That it just gets me.
Yes.
And I'll say it right out loud.
Yeah. Well, I went to, like I said, a PWI, and I went to an HBCU. And I remember going only one game to this PWI, and it was nothing. I'm sitting there, you're sitting there with...
Sterile.
It's sterile. Nobody cares about who's sitting next to them.
Not passionate.
There's no camaraderie, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You just sit there. And it wasn't worth it. I was like, well, this is first and last time.
Yeah.
Halftime isn't the same at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're wrapping up on the end of this second segment, and we want to come back for this last segment and try and talk about the most god-awful topic, Independence Day. So let's skip out for a couple of commercial breaks, and we'll come back and try and talk about Independence Day. Independence Day for who? We'll be right back.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
SocratesGarrettENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into MDOT grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Sizzling in Mississippi. So glad you're joining us on this eve of Independence Day. So let's talk about that a little bit. And let me just catch up just a little bit on the chat, Maati. That's Mr. Norway?
Yes.
I believe I met him one time at your store.
Okay.
Top African athletes should study the history and purpose of the founding of HBCUs. Okay. And like Kim Lewis say, they don't read. So how are you doing with this? How are you doing with this Independence Day? I just had a birthday last week, and
Baraha Kuzaliwa.
Is that a positive thing? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Means happy birthday in Swahili.
Well, thank you, and but for many years now, I've had my opinion about Independence Day has changed. It wasn't the same as when I was a younger man, and so I'm curious how is it that you feel about that, and Maati, the whole concept of Independence Day, 1776, divorcing ourselves supposedly from British rule, while at the very same time the documents were being signed, there could have been there could have been close to 500,000 slaves in the 13 colonies.
There were more than that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but and at one time there were white indentured servants that actually outnumbered the Africans.
So
Right.
still, but when we talk about that, we're talking about all men are created equal.
Yeah.
And we want release from the tyranny of British rule.
Right.
We're going to shift our system of government.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're doing that.
Yeah. And then, less than 100 years later, then the South is fighting for its definition of what independence means to them, which is the right to molest children, torture people.
Torture, rape,
rape, murder, things like that. Well, it's the same with 1776, 1865.
Right.
2020, George Floyd on the ground being choked to death. Welcome to America, Independence Day means absolutely nothing to me. Period.
To you.
Never has, never will. Ever.
And it's been working its way there for me now for years and years. I used to go living up in Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia. Used to drive up to the Capitol.
Okay.
Because somebody turned me on to that thing where they had that, it was very patriotic.
Oh, okay.
See, that's another thing too about this, this line that's drawn between, patriotism and our independence. The military might is celebrated as a correlate of our independence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought it was because all men were created equal, and we didn't want to operate under a tyrant.
Well.
So you see, it's like a shell game, and things get moved around. Because when I used to drive up there, to sit out there on the grass on the west
lawn of the Capitol.
West lawn of the Capitol. And they have that almost like a clamshell looking. You've seen it on TV, on PBS or whatever. It's the stage set up, and they have the symphony and, the white jacket and conductor, and then they have TV actors come out, and Colin Powell came out for years and years talking about the military. I'm trying to think of that. Gary Sinise.
Yeah.
And the other guy that's on Criminal Minds, he's a really good actor.
Patinkin, Mandy Patinkin.
Not that one, the other one. The other, the guy with the goatee. They're kind of the co-hosts for many years.
Okay.
And probably in a span of about 10 or 12 years, I was probably up there about 8 or 9 of those years. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it. They focused on a different, you had all this beautiful music going on, wonderful players, had all these different singers coming out, the lady with the operatic voice come out, soulful music come out, country people come, all different types. It was very homogenous, the whole event, and as was the crowd, but a heavy military presence. Then you look behind you when you're sitting on the lawn going down. Then you look behind you, the actual Capitol building, and the skirt going around the Capitol. That's full of all the haves. The haves not sitting on the lawn.
Okay, right.
The haves are up there in the chairs.
Yes.
On the skirt of the Capitol.
Okay.
With some separation between the people.
Well, of course, sure. Yeah.
Don't want to get nothing on them.
Elitism. That it's
And they focus on a different conflict, war, era. And then they also would highlight, they always highlight every branch of the military, but then each year they put special emphasis on a certain branch of the military.
Okay.
And then they'd play all the military songs, and if you're a veteran or active duty and, from the Navy, for example, and they played, Anchors Away, you get up and, you're all, and I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And then it rained like hell one year, and I took this beautiful lady up there with me. We had to stay over because it was a long trip coming back late at night.
Sure.
We wouldn't want to get in an accident.
Right.
So we had to stay over.
Okay.
But it rained tremendously, so we made it back to the hotel drenched, and watched the thing on TV because the concert went on even though the people couldn't be there.
Okay.
And that ended up kind of being a turning point for me. And I think I watched it once or twice on TV, but never went back to it again. Because something about it, it's like when you figure out there's a shell game going on, you get really determined to figure out which one.
Yeah.
And I think I figured out which one at this point.
Okay.
So I don't do that kind of thing, and I don't get excited about it.
Yeah.
It's not that I have any disparagement for the military. I don't. I participated in it for 20 years. I'm proud of my service, but there's a whole lot of other monkey business going on that I don't want to see affiliated with that, and I just don't want to see it going on. So I make different choices.
Okay.
What would you said you just never acknowledge it, period.
Yeah, it's nothing to me.
Have you ever?
No.
Even as a little girl, you didn't?
Nope.
Okay.
No. It means nothing because, I mean, in 1776, I'm the 9th generation on my father's side of my family born in America.
Maati is so beautiful. I'm sorry, I just had to. There it is, right there. There it is. From Monica, Helpful Angel Austin.
Oh.
Do you know her? And Mr. Norway says, so the land was literally taken from the indigenous people, and the people that took it enslaved African people, and now they want us to celebrate the freedom they took from the forces that colonized them. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I can't celebrate a loss.
What a summary. Wow. You need to be here. You need to be here, Mr. Norway.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great summary, and really, I don't celebrate any defeats, I'll remember them, but not from a place of reminiscing.
Defeats, you mean?
Right. It's a defeat for my people. It's meaningless in many ways because independence from England didn't mean anything for black people in this country. Right.
But we have so many people that are just just drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And
I'll drink Kool-Aid on Juneteenth. I'll drink it on the 4th of July.
But you and I both know that there's going to be all kinds of celebrations going on.
Right.
We had fireworks the other night,
Throughout the neighborhood, she can't sleep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gunfire.
Yeah.
And fireworks.
Yeah.
And it's just on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What are you celebrating? I want to ask people, what are they celebrating? When I see black people on television, on the news, because they always like to put a microphone in front of a black person.
Always.
At the wrong time.
Right.
And pick the wrong person.
Right.
So those who are feeling patriotic towards America, I don't understand it at all. I mean, it's a completely foreign concept to me what the 4th of July should mean to a black person in America. I'm just at a complete loss.
It made it into the pulpit on Sunday. I go across the street from the store,
right?
And Pastor Johnson was asking the question, is it celebration or is it mourning?
Right.
Right. A very, very, very passionate sermon. I'd be interested to see so many people in the chat. We know where Mr. Norway is on it. There goes Chantel. Hey, Chantel. She totally agrees. I think she agrees with both. I think she agrees with Mr. Norway's summary and the fact that Maati is so beautiful. Yeah, so we just try to make sense of these things and try to understand, and
I would love for somebody to really explain it to me. I mean, I'm open to hearing.
Yeah.
It would have to be it would have to be a black person to explain to me why. I can understand why a white person may feel a certain way about America, but and about the 4th of July. I don't happen to do so, but I can understand someone who would have a background, maybe one of their ancestors had fought in the Revolutionary War of America.
Yeah.
But however, I don't have that experience. So, but I would like to hear from somebody who had a shared experience with me, what gets their goat that they just, want to celebrate and wear red, white, and blue, and
yeah. And I bet you many times it's just because the older generation did it, and that's what we do.
Oh, okay.
Why do you always cut the end off the ham?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. They did it.
They did it.
Finally go back to grandmother, and she says, "Well, the ham didn't fit in this small pan."
Had a small roaster. It's just bizarre. And I was reading an article today, Maati, too, talking about this enshrining of white supremacy into law.
Mm-hmm. Once again.
Maybe coming back in a circle here. And this author, who was writing for The New Yorker about 4 years ago, said after 1900, the South had Jim Crow, a legal regime of separatism, but the rest of the country had ghettos, redlining, gerrymandering, quota and exclusion systems, and the artifice of the local school district, de facto discrimination. We now call institutional racism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what he's saying is that's much harder to address. Mm-hmm. It requires more of people than just striking down a law.
Right. We can't strike down behaviors. We can enforce laws that might protect people, but we can't strike down attitudes and belief systems, and I don't think that we should try. I think that for me, I don't want to be steeped in Jim Crow.
Right.
Wherever Jim Crow is, Jim Crow can stay. Don't come to my block. We'll have a problem if you come to me. But if you want to stay over there and have an all-white situation, so be it.
Mm-hmm. Richie Jones saying he's still not standing for the national anthem.
Yeah.
I mean, get it. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to understand.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're starting to wind out. Maati, did you have any other? It's an interesting program tonight. It kind of makes me sad. I mean, thinking about all this, because here we are talking about the highest court in the land. Is seemingly taking pot shots at people's liberties. I might put the student loan thing in a separate category.
Sure.
But the other ones, it's just really troublesome to me. Mm-hmm. I believe, just like with the HB 1020 and the SB 2343, that there's going to be more lawsuits coming.
Sure.
I believe we haven't heard the end of all this, but the very fact that it continues to happen and continues to happen with such regularity, if that doesn't tell you about the system that we live in, I mean, what else does?
Right. But I mean, even the cut on the college debt forgiveness really is part and parcel of the system of white supremacy, because it's not going to allow for treatment for equal treatment between races.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just part and it just looks a little different,
Yeah.
which I understand what you're saying, but it's part and
Plus, I have a bias too because I have a daughter that's into them for
oh yeah,
all kinds of.
Sure.
She just got her bachelor's degree and is working on a master's. So anyway, well, thank you once again for another night sizzling in Mississippi, just trying to make our way through things.
Yes.
And thank you so much. We got a few extra comments here I want to make sure we can acknowledge before we sign off. Kim Lewis, I used to sing it in my younger years until I was made aware of the other verses. Racist.
With the American anthem, I'm going to.
Yeah, same thing with America the Beautiful.
Right.
Standing up for something or fall for anything. Wow. Stand up for something or fall for anything.
Yeah.
I spent 28 years in the military. I had to, having spent 28 years, Mr. Lewis. Wow. I did wear the uniform with pride of duty. Me too. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our producer for being in here tonight on what for a lot of people is a holiday weekend, but we wanted to just keep the ball rolling. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with you again a week from tonight at 6:30, and I hope to bring you some new information, some good content, and good clarity, discussion, being able to talk things through. A lot of people really enjoying the program. So thank you so much for joining us and following We Believe Digital into this new era. You definitely have a voice with us. And take good care of each other. See you next Monday.